Attention, you're listening to the Todd Huff Radio Show, America's home for conservative, not bitter talk radio. Be advised that the content of this program has been documented to prevent and even cure liberalism, and listening may cause you to lean to the right. Here's your conservative, but not bitter host, Todd Huff.
All right, my friends, got a lot I want to get to today. I told you earlier in the week, I shared some very, very initial thoughts earlier. I think it might have been Monday. I don't think it was yesterday. It was Monday. I shared some initial thoughts on Trump's executive order regarding the price of drugs, prescription medications, pharmaceuticals, and so forth. I wanted to get the specifics because I was talking about it in general on Monday, and I said I wanted to read it, take a look at it, think about it, because there's things that that concern me about this, and there's a lot of folks out there, and this is not me. And I think it's the vast majority of you are not like this either. But some people, when their person is in charge, when their party is in charge, they're willing to change their beliefs and so forth, simply because they're committed to the individual. I'm not. I am a big supporter of Trump in general with what he's trying to do, but I'm a supporter of Trump because of what he's doing, not because of Trump and giving him the green light in my mind to do whatever he wants. That's not how I approach these things. But he has earned my trust. I do personally like a lot what he's doing, and my default is to start off on his side, I think. And so I want to go through this today as fairly as I know how. That's what I want to do. There's other things in the stack of stuff as well. The left is out there storming an ICE facility, allegedly assaulting ICE enforcement officers, wanting to avoid dealing with the consequences of their actions, as per usual. I've got that there. We've also got Jake Tapper, who's written this book exposing, now that it doesn't matter, the deception of the Biden administration, how they hid Biden's mental fitness from the American people. Someone's put together a montage of examples of Jake Tapper actually being part of that problem prior to releasing that book, which again, this is ridiculous. Listen, if I were you, I wouldn't buy the stupid book because he's a professional deceiver. When I play these sound bites, and it's maybe the next hour, before I get to that, you're going to know exactly what I mean if you haven't seen these already. So there's other stuff that I can get to as well, but that's where I want to start today. Before I get rocking and rolling, friends, Freedom Marketplace. That is something that we started here on this program. We started this. There's several reasons they kind of came together for why we did Freedom Marketplace. First, as we built, had more and more advertisers on this program, we initially were putting them on the website, and just their logo and links and that sort of stuff. And I realized at some point there were too many logos. It got messy. It's hard to find stuff. So I thought we've got to have a searchable database. And so we started looking into that. And I thought, well, this database gives other people the opportunity to list their business there without being an advertiser on the show, provides our listeners more conservative, freedom-loving, America-first businesses to choose from. So we started offering businesses the opportunity to have a listing there. It's very affordable, by the way, if you're a business owner and want to list your business there. And, of course, the idea behind it all is that we are tired of giving our money to businesses who take those profits, give them to leftist candidates and leftist causes. And so all these things kind of merged together. It was the creation The creation that was resulted was Freedom Marketplace. You can check it out. It is free for you to use. It doesn't cost you anything. You can go and search for businesses there, and you can find businesses that are pushing in the same direction you are, which I think, look, I refer to on a regular basis the 7 pillars of propaganda. These are pillars of our society that the left is taking control of, and all 7 of these areas are areas where we are engaged in some sort of cultural or political battles. This would include woke business, which is why we have Freedom Marketplace. This includes the media. This includes academia. This includes science. It doesn't include the discipline of science, but it includes the leftists that are running the scientific community, I guess, and are using it to force their leftist agenda down the throats of the American people. And so we have fights on all these fronts, metaphorical, but still nonetheless very real in the sense that we've got to win these battles and wrest control back of these pillars of society from these radical leftists. Freedom Marketplace is one way you can do that to fight back against the woke business community. FreedomMarketplace.net is where you can go, my friends. All right, so let's look at this. Let's look at this executive order. This thing is official. You can go to the whitehouse.gov. I've had this in the stack of stuff if you want to read the executive order in its entirety. It's not super long, but it's also not something I'm going to read on here. I'm going to look at summaries to kind of explain this and go through this. It's called, the official name of this thing is called Delivering Most Favored Nation Prescription Drug Pricing to American Patients. It's an executive order. I don't have the number of it and the executive order number in front of me, but nonetheless, it's one of the executive orders. Trump just signed this on Monday morning. He signed this into, not into law, but he signed the executive action. Now, I'm going to look at a summary here that I've put together with the help of AI and some of my inputs and questions and just developing and getting this put together. But here's the summary, generally speaking, of this executive order delivering most favored nation prescription drug pricing to American patients, dated May 12th. President Donald J. Trump issued an executive order on May 12th, 2025, aimed at significantly reducing prescription drug prices for American patients and implementing a most favored nation pricing policy. The policy ties the prices of certain prescription drugs in the United States to the lowest prices paid by other nations, particularly those with government-run healthcare systems. The initiative seeks to address the long-standing issues of Americans paying disproportionately higher prices for medications compared to patients in other countries. Okay, so before we get too far down that path, let me back up a little bit here and talk a little bit about what I said on Monday when I was first talking about this. And let's identify the problem here. And here's the problem in a nutshell. Listen, I'm not someone who's an expert in pharmaceutical sales or prescription drug, bringing a drug to market. I'm familiar with some of these things from studying, but some of these things from I used to do some work with people who had to seek FDA approval, and so I kind of saw from a distance what that was like. My best friend is in the pharmaceutical sales business. I've got to see, and I've asked him lots of questions about some of these things. And of course, I just read and study this stuff. But suffice it to say, I'm not an expert. But in general, at a 30,000 foot just synopsis of the problem, here's what it is. Pharmaceutical companies have been charging Americans significantly more for their drugs than they do people who are in other countries. And Trump, again, going back to what is at the core of Trump's administration. At the core of Trump's administration, yes, you could say the Make America Great Again, but at the core, I would even say maybe what I guess comes even slightly before that is this belief in America first. In this belief that, now you can disagree if you want. I think he's right on this. I don't think there's much debate, but just listen. The sign, I'm talking to the leftists who may be tuned in here today, the liberals. The sign of being an adult, I read this, I didn't come up with this, although this sounds like something I would have come up with. I'm kidding, just kind of. But it says, there's a saying that says something to this effect. The sign, or one of the signs of being an adult, is to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. We've lost that in our society today. So I'm explaining this. You can conclude that it's not the right idea. You can say that it's the wrong way of looking at it. That is your right. But at least if you're going to make that conclusion, make that jump, make that decision, then make the decision based upon what it actually is. Actually choose to be against what it really is and not what you think it might be. America first is this idea that says the American people have been on the hook for too much of the financial and military burden of things around the world, things happening around the world. It's not that America doesn't want to lead. It's that America doesn't want to bear such a high proportion of the cost. This is the starting point. So when you look at tariffs and you look at how Trump is dealing with reciprocal tariffs and international trade and trade deficits with foreign countries, at its core is this idea that America has been smacked around. Other countries have smacked us around. Some of them have smacked us around more gently than others. Some of them have basically assaulted us, like China. And because of myriad of factors, which I think could mostly be boiled down to, in the case of China, one idea that says, look, we want to have the American market have access to inexpensive goods. And listen, I understand that. So there were previous administrations and just previous dealings with some of the folks around the world when it came to trade, that was the starting point. You know what? We'll deal with this problem. We'll pay a little bit more for that. We want to give our people access to these inexpensive goods, this technology, inexpensive technology, whatever. You can make the case for that. Okay, fine. Trump says it's been disproportionate in how it's been applied. And when you factor everything that the United States citizen, the taxpayer, our nation as a whole has been on the hook for, it has led to something that is too heavy of a burden. And Trump says, my job as the president of all these people is to alleviate that burden. My job as president is to get the boot off the throat of the American taxpayer, the small business owner. My job is to make this as prosperous of an economy as I possibly can, and I can't do that without fundamentally addressing some of these things that have been allowed to happen. Because historically what has happened is that instead of addressing these core, bigger problems, presidents and administrations, our government in general, would pursue things that in the short term would create an air of optimism for the markets, for the stock market, for the economy at large. And they would do these things, maybe reducing taxes. That's great. That's wonderful. But if you're ignoring this other component, you're not going to, there's a ceiling. The ceiling is lower as far as what this economy is capable of, with some of these things hanging around, these things that are kind of chained to our metaphorical feet here. And so Trump has said no more. I'm going to address this. We're going to fix this. In the short term, there might be pain. That's why I often use the analogy of, if you're sick. Trump uses this as well. If you're sick and you have a very dangerous or debilitating disease, oftentimes the treatment can make you feel a little bit worse, or put you on your backside for a bit. Maybe you have to have surgery and you have to use a wheelchair or crutches for a period of time. You can't, if you have shoulder surgery, my brother's had a torn labrum. He's had that surgery. He couldn't use that shoulder for a long time. He had funny things he was holding his arm in for a while. I've had ACL reconstructive surgeries. I was in a machine for the first week, basically 24 hours a day. It was called the CPM machine. That thing bit my knee and straightened it constantly. Had to lay flat on my back. The only time I wasn't in that machine, now that dates me because the last time I had that surgery was in 1997, but that's the process. It put me on my backside for a while. The only time I was off the machine was when I was doing therapy or had to get off to go take a shower, go to the restroom, something like that. And by the way, that was painful to get up and walk on that knee when the blood would rush down. It was not a fun experience, but it allowed me to be able to play sports again, whereas the torn ACL, I was unable to do that. So that's where these analogies come in. And so we have, in the course of trying to right the undermining problems of this economic system, that not capitalism, but international trade, that system that we found ourselves in, Trump was performing, if you will, Dr. Trump, to really upset the left, was performing the operation, was going through the treatment, was treating us, and it can be painful. Now there's signs of improvement. The markets have responded. People are optimistic. They look like it looks like there's light at the end of the tunnel here, and the uncertainty and the intensity of this may be coming to an end. It may have to be used again. We'll see. This is a process. Hang in there and see what happens. And I think we should trust Trump to manage this because I fully believe that this is what he's trying to do. So that's where we are now. Let's talk specifically now about the pharmaceutical side of this because it's the same thing. It's all part of the same problem. American companies oftentimes, develop drugs, research and development, right? They got to do all the testing and get approval by the FDA and all the stuff that we don't even necessarily know about and understand. And even if we do understand it, it never makes any sense. It's unnecessarily complicated. It's ridiculously expensive. In fact, I remember the folks I used to do some work with. I didn't work specifically on FDA approval, but I used to do work with this company, and they would often, the folks there shared with me, sometimes they would launch their product or whatever in another country first because it was a little bit easier to then get FDA approval. If it had been used elsewhere, it took longer to get FDA approval in the U.S. It was more expensive. It just took longer, all that stuff. So that's the barrier, which again, probably needs to be addressed. I mean, we don't want to haphazardly approve things, but at the same time, the red tape, without a doubt, I don't care, whatever red tape exists in this country, you can cut a significant portion of it, and that needs to happen everywhere that we can find it. But that being said, you go through the process here as a pharmaceutical company, you get it approved, and then you charge the American people more. Now, I said on Monday, one of the things that Rush used to say on his program, which was that some things are priced based upon people's ability to pay. And so since the United States is still the dominant economy on planet Earth, since the United States is a prosperous nation, even though we certainly have the ability to be more prosperous, and we certainly have a heavy burden hanging around our neck in the form of our federal government, the bureaucratic state, the deep state, my friends, it is clear that this is it's a prosperous place. And so when you factor in Medicare and Medicaid and government's paying for a lot of this stuff anyway, and then you've got other forms of things like Obamacare and just legislation pertaining to a bunch of stuff in the health space and lots of money in Washington, D.C., and a prosperous people and health insurance and all of this, they charge more. They charge significantly more for the same drug here as they charge in other countries. And so, without getting yet into the role of government, what this executive order seeks to do specifically, it's clear that this is a problem. It's clear that this is a situation where Trump's going to say, my citizens, our people here, the taxpayer is not being treated fairly in the marketplace. These pharmaceutical companies are taking advantage. You have other industrialized countries who are paying significantly less than us, and why is that the case? It seems to me that you're looking to make lots of money off of us and then use the profits here to help deliver cheaper medications to other countries. We're not going to do that anymore. I don't like that. I'm going to issue an executive order to try to prevent that from happening again. That's where this started. Now, I would say, in my estimation, as I listen to lay that out, I can understand why the administration says, okay, let us now seek to do something about this. Because of the fundamental approach, philosophy, just what Trump's trying to do. America first. This isn't America first. This doesn't make any sense, right? This has got to stop. You can't be treating us like this. So Trump's trying to find a way to do something about this. I understand all this. I'm on board with this. It makes sense. The question is, what can and should the President of the United States do? What can and should Congress do? How does this get remedied? Because again, as a conservative, I'm a believer in the free market, but the question is that really what we're dealing with right here? Are we being manipulated because of the system that we're in and how we're paying for a lot of this through the federal government anyway, through Medicare and Medicaid? There's a lot of questions that arise for me. So I've got to pause and take a timeout. We'll continue this on the other side of the break, my friends, talking here about Trump's executive order for pharmaceuticals, prescription drug prices. We'll do that on the other side of the break, my friends. Sit tight, back here in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. So, picking up where we left off last segment, Trump, I've identified kind of the mindset, what Trump's trying to do in general, and then specifically what he's trying to do with pharmaceutical prices, because this doesn't make any sense, right? This is not good. It's not good for the American consumer that we're paying multiple times more for these drugs that are being sold around the world at significantly less prices. Now, maybe there's, some degree of reason and rationale when it comes to things like FDA approval and red tape. Maybe it's, it probably is more expensive. I don't know that for a fact. My instincts are it's more expensive to bring a drug to market here probably than anywhere else. Maybe that's not correct. I don't know, but that seems to make sense to me. So maybe there's some reasons why it should be a little bit more expensive, but it's clear that the pharmaceutical companies are charging higher prices here, using the profits from what they make off of U.S. sales of their drugs to subsidize their overall operation and the delivery of said medication to other countries. Trump says that's not going to fly. So he writes this executive order, which I've told you is called the Delivering Most Favored Nation Prescription Drug Pricing to American Patients. And there's four, depending upon how you break this down, four key objectives. Number one, lowering drug prices for Medicare and seniors. The executive order directs the Department of Health and Human Services to take immediate steps to reduce costs for Medicare beneficiaries and seniors, ensuring they benefit from the same low prices available internationally. Number 2, bypassing middlemen. I've got a clip of Trump talking about the middlemen. And only as Trump does. He's talking about the middlemen here. But the policy establishes mechanisms for American patients to purchase drugs directly from manufacturers at the most favored nation price, bypassing intermediaries that often inflate costs. I mean, in general, if there's a middleman, sometimes a middleman helps get a product to market. But when there is a middleman, typically there's an increased cost because that middleman has to, often to either purchase it or include their markup in there, something. They get a cut of this to deliver it. Trump's going to try to bypass this with the executive order. The third objective is to address the global price disparity. This policy and this executive order aims to end the practice of foreign free riding, as it's often referred to, or could be referred to, where other countries benefit from lower drug prices while Americans bear the burden of higher costs to subsidize pharmaceutical innovation. That's what I just was talking about a moment ago. And number 4, potential cost reductions. The policy has the potential to cut drug prices up to 80% for certain medications, although the certain impact on prices, patients, and drug makers remains uncertain. So, of course, there's going to be challenges, probably legal challenges to this, pushback from the industry, lawsuits potentially from drug manufacturers. This, by the way, this sort of thing has faced challenges, of course, in this arena before, even with Trump. And these things will temporarily halt the policy. And people who are healthcare or health policy experts, they have questions about this. It's not clear which drugs will be affected, how much the prices will actually decrease, and just what that's going to mean for the pharmaceutical industry overall. So, this again is part of Trump's America First priority. This is to prioritize Americans, in this case, American patients, by reducing healthcare costs, promoting domestic pharmaceutical manufacturing, and address a core problem, which is other countries paying significantly less for these drugs than we do. So, this is kind of, I guess the backstory and the reason and rationale for why we're in this position. Now, I've got some sound bites of Trump talking about this. I've got the sound bites. In fact, one of the things I want to talk about, which I am fervently against, and you should be too, as a free market, as one who believes in the free market, this idea of price controls. Price controls. Price controls do not work. Price controls are the antithesis of a capitalistic free market society. The government coming in and setting the prices. So I'm against price controls. I'm for policies that actually help lower costs. I'm for policies that encourage competition. Competition, by the way, is one of the surest ways to lower costs. Or prices, because that is a competitive environment. In fact, if you want to understand what's truly wrong fundamentally with much of our government, it's that there are no forces except for you and me, our oversight of the government. That's the only external force they have to be efficient. There's no desire, there's no need to improve. Now, you could have people that are self-motivated, that want to be the best they can be, who are working in the government, who are doing their best, but competition always makes people better. In fact, last night, I got to say this. Last night, I should have said this off the top. My Indiana Pacers defeat the Cleveland Cavaliers 4-1. Cleveland Cavaliers. Listen, I actually like that team, the Cavs. I think they got every call imaginable in the book. They shot about 600 free throws a game. But Donovan Mitchell is a heck of a basketball player. He's going to take a lot of heat for losing this series because he is in that top tier or near that top tier of the best players, most talented players in the NBA, in my estimation. But that's not on him. He played, there were games we couldn't stop the guy. But the Pacers win. Now, let me ask you this. Do you think that the guys playing on the Pacers or the Cavs or whatever team you like right now, do you think that any of those guys would be as good at basketball as they are if they never competed? If there was never a threat of, losing, or if there was never a threat of losing their starting job? What drives these guys to practice year round? Yes, they get hefty sums of money for what they do. But the ones that are true, the true greats, the Michael Jordans, the Kobe Bryants of the world, they had an insatiable desire to win, and competition made them better. If there was no competition, the things that we have witnessed, I watched Tyrese Halliburton do some incredible things, acting like Reggie Miller circa 1994 or 1999 or whatever on the Indiana Pacers. That's how Tyrese Halliburton was playing. And it's the competitive nature of it that drives that out. It's an amazing thing how this works. I love it. It's one of the reasons to watch sport. And I know some people think it's all scripted and everything, whatever. I love the sport of it. I love it, and I enjoy watching big plays being made in the spotlight when the chips are down. And Tyrese Halliburton has made a ton of those. Michael Jordan made a ton of those. Kobe Bryant made a ton of those. Reggie Miller. And it's competition that drives us, drives players, drives them, drives us in our ways to do those things. Competition is a good thing, just like anything. People can take it too far to where they are unable to function and they hate people and everything else. Competition brings out the best in us. Good competition makes us better. That's lost in a government setting. It's why things always cost more and we get less production. It's why the post office is atrocious. There's no competition. You can try. I think you can do some things, but at the bottom line, competition is important, and that is what's necessary in a free market. That's what's going to do. Those factors do more good than price controls. Price controls have the opposite effect. Instead of addressing, it's like when I was a little league basketball player, they said you could only score 20 points. Actually, you could score 10 field goals. And I remember scoring out of games, or I remember having 9 field goals and not being able to shoot. It was a silly, silly situation to find ourselves in. But nonetheless, that's what the left, that's how they behave. And that's something I want to talk about, price controls as it pertains to this executive order. Is that what we're dealing with here? We'll get into that next segment. Friends, before I do this, I got to take a break here in a moment. Last chance. Friday, May 16th is your last chance to become a lifetime member of the Inner Circle. $99 for a lifetime membership. You're going to be able to get exclusive content, behind-the-scenes updates, live video chats, a bunch of stuff that we're going to be doing here behind the scenes. I invite you to be a part of it. Would love to have you there. $99 gets you a membership for life. ToddHuffShow.com/join is where you can go. ToddHuffShow.com/join. Quick timeout, my friends. Back in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. Final segment of this, the first hour of the program. Trump was asked about price controls when he was signing this executive order on Monday morning. I want to play this clip here in a moment. Before I do that, though, friends, let me tell you that if you are a lover of seafood, I mean real seafood, you've got to check out Kenai Fish. That's Kenai, by the way, Kenai Fish. Family-owned company delivering wild-caught Alaskan seafood straight to your door, no matter where you are. Landlocked state, double landlocked state, Nebraska, it doesn't matter. my friends. They've got salmon that's harvested from the pristine Kenai and Castleoff rivers, sockeye salmon, coho salmon, king salmon. It's vacuum sealed. It's shipped via next day air straight to you to lock in that fresh, just caught flavor. But it doesn't stop there. They've also got halibut from the Gulf of Alaska. It's mild, it's sweet, it's perfect for any recipe. And they've got shellfish like king crab, snow crab, scallops, a whole lot more. It's the best Alaska has to offer. Kenai Fish is about quality, sustainability, and supporting hardworking fishermen in this country. So go to KenaiFish.com today, KENAI Fish.com. Use promo code Todd. You'll save 15% on your order. That's KENAIFish.com, KenaiFish.com. You'll taste the difference, my friends, and you'll be hooked. All right, let's go here to this sound bite, this Q&A. Trump's asked about whether or not his executive order is a form of price control. And it's worth noting what Trump's response is. Here it is.
How do you respond to the fact that this...
It's not price control. No. What was price control is before. If you want to talk about price control is what they were doing. They were making us pay. They set a price. And they said, here's what we're going to pay. And anything else, charge America. Because at that time they had a very stupid president. And it really went crazy during the last 4 years. And remember this, the Democrats are the ones that allowed this to happen. They were the ones that were the protector of this pricing system. And I think it's going to be very hard. You'll have to ask Democrats, are they going to vote against the one great, big, beautiful deal that's being negotiated now, tax cuts, etc., when now on top of the tax cuts and regulation cuts, all the things, now you're going to say that the price of your medicine is going down by 60, 70, 80%. You're going to vote against it? I think a lot of Democrats are going to be forced to do something that their leaders are going to beg them not to do, and that's vote for the bill. I don't see how they can vote against it. How can they vote against it when drug prices, drugs and pharmaceuticals are going to be down 70, 80%? It's going to be very interesting.
Okay, so Trump says what we had before were price controls. And let's paint the picture here, because this is he's got a point here. He's got a point here. So this is different than straight price controls. What Trump is saying is that the United States is going to be charged a free market, what it's charging for the product elsewhere, right? What these companies are charging elsewhere. They're not saying we're only going to pay $50 or $10 or $200 for this medication. They're not interfering with the company's ability to price their product. What they're doing is they're saying you're not going to charge us dramatically more than what you're charging everyone else. Now, some people say, look, if you're telling people in private business how much they can charge for a product, that's price control. But that's not exactly what's happening. They can charge what they want. It's just they can't then take that price according to this order. And again, the question is going to remain, is this going to be, is this legal? is this, it certainly makes sense from, one level to say, yeah, this all makes sense. But you can't say my drug is worth $5 a pill or whatever, but Americans are going to pay $15. Okay, then make it 15. Well, they can't pay 15 in another country. Okay, so we're paying you so that you can deliver your country and subsidize your operation to deliver that to another country. And that's where Trump says that's not going to fly on my watch. I'm going to fight this in every conceivable way. Now, I'm against price controls. I don't 100% know if I'm against all of this or against this particular order, but this concept to me does make sense in the fact, especially when you factor in, look, if you deliver a new drug to market, you get you have a patent for the drug or whatever the term is for a drug. And there's no competition. And you set the price. Like that is, you have then fixed the price. And listen, you've put all the research and development into it. I'm not here to say that you can't do that at all. But I am saying, explain to us why. Why is it 3 times, whatever, multiple times more in the United States than it is in some other country? It's the same medication. In fact, if it's produced here, wouldn't it be cheaper for it to be produced here for people that live here? I don't know. There's a lot of questions here. And at the top of the show, and it's going to get to the end of this hour. This is going to continue into the next hour. But at the top of the show, I told you that people are willing to throw down principle oftentimes because they're guys in charge. I'm not willing to do that, but context is king. And this is interesting, the way that Trump's approaching it. Gotta go. SDG.